company has a name for that feeling you carry into work every day. They just don't call it that to your face. It's called optimal anxiety, and it's not a side effect of modern work. It's the target. I'm going to show you exactly how organizations engineer insecurity into your daily psychology to make you more compliant, more productive, and far less likely to negotiate. According to the American Psychological Association's most recent workplace survey, 54% of US workers report that job insecurity has a significant impact on their daily stress. Most people attribute that feeling to external conditions: the economy, the industry, the uncertainty of modern work. Some of that is accurate, but some of the feelings you carry into work every day were put there on purpose. And understanding that distinction between insecurity that responds to real conditions and insecurity calibrated to serve the organization is what this video is about. Any organization that employs people faces a fundamental management challenge. An employee who feels completely secure has no urgency the organization didn't explicitly create. No ambient pressure to go above and beyond, no reason to stay quiet when speaking up would serve their interests over the company's. Security, from the organization's perspective, produces a workforce that negotiates, pushes back, leaves when a better option appears, and organizes when conditions become unreasonable. That is expensive to manage. An employee who feels completely insecure, on the other hand, is dysfunctional. Cognitive resources consumed by threat assessment, actively looking for an exit instead of investing in the work. That is also expensive. What produces the most organizational value is neither extreme. It's the middle. An employee who is just insecure enough to work harder than their contract requires. Just insecure enough to accept conditions they know are unreasonable because the cost of resistance feels too high. Just insecure enough to stay quiet when speaking up would benefit them but create friction for the organization. But not so insecure that they break down, disengage, or start looking for the exit. Researchers have a name for this voluntary extra effort. It's called organizational citizenship behavior. And the data is unambiguous. Moderate job insecurity is the most cost-effective way to maximize it. Fear of loss is more reliable than desire for gain as a motivator because it operates continuously and at a lower threshold. Let's be specific about what moderate job insecurity produces for an organization. The first output is unpaid extended hours. An employee who believes their position might be at risk consistently works beyond contracted hours. Not because they've been instructed to, but because the internal calculation of what happens if they don't feels too costly to absorb. It's 6:47 p.m. Your manager posts in the team channel. Anyone able to jump on a quick call about the Morrison account? Nobody responds for 4 minutes. Then you do. Not because it's your account, but because the silence felt like a room everyone else had left, and you didn't want to be the last name missing. That calculation happens in under 30 seconds. It costs the company nothing. It costs you an evening. All of it is free to the organization. The insecurity that produces it costs nothing. The second output is suppressed negotiation. An employee who feels replaceable doesn't negotiate aggressively for raises, doesn't push back on scope expansion, doesn't have the confident conversation about market rate they'd have if they felt genuinely secure. Here's what that looks like in an actual email draft. Draft 1, the one you want to send, says, based on my contributions this year and current market data, I'd like to discuss a salary adjustment to X dollars. The version you actually send 3 drafts later says, when you have a moment, maybe we could touch base about compensation. No rush at all. Nothing about your value changed between drafts. What changed was your assessment of how replaceable you are. Job insecurity functions as a ceiling on compensation negotiations. The company doesn't have to argue your counteroffer is unreasonable. Your own assessment of your replaceability does that work for them, without a word said. The third output is acceptance of unreasonable conditions. A manager who needs someone to absorb responsibilities outside their job description gets a very different response from an insecure employee than from a secure one. The insecure employee absorbs it, not because it's fair, but because being labeled difficult feels like a worse outcome than the burden itself. The fourth output is suppressed dissent. A restructuring memo goes out Tuesday morning. You know something the memo doesn't say? The plan has a real flaw, one that'll cost the team weeks in Q3. You start typing a message to your manager, specific, useful. Then you read it back and delete the 2 sentences that sound most like criticism before you hit send. What's left is technically true. It's also useless. Nobody told you to self-censor. You did the math yourself in 11 seconds. That's organizational silence, not a policy, a private calculation. The 5th output is reduce collective action. Individual job insecurity, distributed across a workforce, functions as an effective barrier to collective organization without any explicit policy against it. When every worker is focused on their own position, the conditions for collective action erode. Now, let's talk about layoffs, because their relationship to insecurity calibration is more deliberate than most realize. The standard narrative is that layoffs are a response to economics. Sometimes that's exactly what's happening, but layoffs also function as a calibration event, a periodic reset of the workforce's fear threshold, and companies that understand this do not limit layoffs to moments of genuine economic necessity. Here's what happens to the employees who remain after a significant layoff. Research on survivor syndrome, the documented experience of employees who keep their jobs after colleagues are let go, consistently shows a short-term period of heightened compliance and effort. Employees who survive the cut work longer, accept more, push back less, say less, because the threat that was previously abstract, I might lose my job someday, just became concrete. They watched it happen to people at the next desk, to people with more experience, to people performing well. The randomness is part of the mechanism. When layoffs don't follow a clear performance logic, when people doing their jobs well were let go, the remaining employees can't protect themselves by simply performing better. The only available response is to become more compliant, more available, more visibly committed. The layoff recalibrated the fear threshold of the entire workforce at the cost of only the people who were let go. And this recalibration effect occurs even when the company is financially healthy. The survivor syndrome has a longer arc organizations rarely account for. The short-term compliance following a layoff typically lasts 3 to 12 months. What replaces it is a different condition. Researchers describe it as hypervigilance. The employee is still working, still meeting deadlines, but part of their cognitive resources that should go toward the actual work, are now permanently allocated to monitoring the environment. Research on job insecurity and burnout shows employees in high insecurity environments are roughly twice as likely to report burnout symptoms, even when the objective workload is identical. The workload didn't cause the burnout, the environmental monitoring did, and the most capable employees, the ones with options, the ones the organization most needs to retain, are the most likely to reach the point where monitoring costs more than staying is worth. They leave, not dramatically, quietly, with a better offer. The organization harvested their compliance in the short term. It lost their capability in the medium term. You cannot eliminate job insecurity. The conditions that produce real insecurity are outside your control. Now, this is what you can do. Stop letting the manufactured version do the same work as the real version. I am going to show you 3 concrete moves you can apply. The last one is the most obvious but the hardest for people to identify. The first move, name the mechanism accurately. The low-level background anxiety you carry into work is not a character flaw. It's the predictable output of an environment designed, at least in part, to produce exactly that output. Naming it accurately interrupts the process by which manufactured insecurity gets treated like real insecurity, because the mechanism only works fully when you attribute it to yourself, rather than understanding it as an environmental input. Once you see it that way, you can evaluate it like any other data. Is there specific evidence behind this, or is this the ambient calibration? The second move is maintain an external reference point. The fear calibration is strongest when the company is the only source of information about your professional value. This is not abstract advice. Here's the quarterly version. Month 1, reconnect with 3 people outside your current company: a former colleague, someone from your industry, anyone with visibility into what your skills are worth elsewhere. Not to ask for a job, just to reconnect. Month 2, update your LinkedIn. Not to signal a job search, but because writing down what you actually did this year is the reference point. Month 3, 1 informational interview, 30 minutes. What does the market look like for someone with my background? Repeat every quarter, and the reference point stays current instead of going stale the moment you need it most. The third move, separate signal from noise. Not all job insecurity is manufactured. Some is signal, specific, evidence indicators that your position or company faces real risk. Those deserve a real response. Here's how to tell the difference in practice. Noise sounds like your manager seemed distracted in your one-on-one. The office mood feels off. Someone said restructuring in an all hands and didn't elaborate. None of that is evidence. It just feels like it, because ambient anxiety recruits anything ambiguous as confirmation. Signal sounds like your company announces a 20% headcount reduction and names your department. Your manager's manager has quietly stopped including you in meetings. Your role is explicitly under review. Signal is specific, named, traceable to a source. Noise is a feeling with no name source at all. When you catch yourself reacting to noise as if it were signal, staying late because the office felt tense, that's the moment to apply move 1. Name it and ask what the actual evidence is. Learning to distinguish signal from noise, responding to signal, refusing to treat noise as signal is how you stop the calibration from working on you the way it was designed to. 3 videos on the system. Performance reviews as legal documents that protect the company. Open offices as panoptic architecture built for visibility and cost reduction. And now, the calibration of insecurity as a management tool built into the ambient conditions of work. None of these required a conspiracy. Nobody sat in a room and said, let's manipulate our employees. They emerged because they work, because they produce outcomes the balance sheet rewards, and because the people inside them were never told what the systems were actually doing. That's changing. If what you just heard sounded familiar, if you've lived through some version of this, you're not alone and you're not without options. I put together something for people going through exactly this. The Dark Mechanics Field Guide. It's not a recap of the video. It's a tactical layer. How to identify which archetype you're dealing with, the exact phrases that shut down manipulation in the moment, and how to document what's happening in a way that protects you if it ever needs to go further. It's everything on this channel, organized so you can find what you need in the moment you need it. Links in the description. If this channel has helped you make sense of what you're going through, this is the next step. The next video goes back to the people who operate inside these systems, specifically the most dangerous person in any office, not the one who's obviously difficult, the one nobody suspects. Subscribe to see who that is.